Welcome back to Mental Mike's Recovery Radio, where recovery meets discovery. I am Mental Mike, and this is episode 21. If you are here, you have stepped well beyond just abstinence. You have been doing the deep, courageous, sometimes exhausting work of looking honestly at yourself, at your neurobiology, at your shadow, at the trauma patterns that kept you stuck. And I want you to know that work deserves to be recognized. This week, the Unified Flux model takes us into one of the most important truths I've come to understand about addiction and recovery. Addiction is, at its core, a problem of fragmentation, not just a chemical dependency, not just a bad habit, but a painful disruption where it feels like your inner self is literally running against itself. One part of you desperate for healing, another part demanding immediate relief, both of them convinced they are trying to protect you. This week, we bring together two of the most powerful psychological maps ever created for navigating that inner conflict. Carl Jung's analytical psychology and Eric Berne's transactional analysis. Together with the UFM, these frameworks give us the vocabulary to actually name the warring parts inside us, trace where they came from, and begin the sacred work of bringing them back into alignment. Jung saw addiction as a spiritual crisis. He described it with a Latin phrase, spiritus contra spiritum, spirit against spirits. The idea that the person in addiction is not weak or broken, but is desperately seeking transcendence, connection, wholeness, through a path that can never actually deliver it. That reframe changes everything. Because when you understand the search beneath the substance, you stop asking what is wrong with me and start asking what was I really looking for. This week we also go into something I never shy away from in this work. The reality that recovery can bring a person to some very dark places. And the importance of knowing you do not have to carry that darkness alone. This week's material holds space for all of it, with honesty and with care. And today I want to introduce you to Nicole. Nicole's story speaks directly to the heart of what this podcast is asking you to face. Because Nicole knows what fragmentation feels like from the inside. The masks, the conflicting voices, the exhaustion of a self that does not yet feel like one coherent whole. Her journey toward integration, toward naming the parts, understanding them, and slowly bringing them home, reflects the exact work the UFM is asking of you this week. Nicole discovered that she was not broken, she was fragmented, and those are two very different things. So settle in, be patient with yourself today, and let's go deeper together.
If you're joining us for this discussion, you are already showing an incredible commitment to your own transformation.
A huge commitment, seriously.
You've stepped so far beyond just abstinence. You've been doing the really deep, difficult, and courageous work of looking at neurobiology, doing shadow work.
And mapping out those trauma patterns that keep you stuck, that sustained effort. It really deserves to be recognized. As we move forward, that internal landscape starts to shift from, chaos into something you can actually navigate.
Exactly. And Mental Mike, the creator of the Unified Flux model, he's always been clear that addiction is, at its core, a problem of fragmentation.
Right. It's not just about a chemical dependency. It's a deep, painful disruption where it feels like your inner self is literally running against itself.
That feeling it's so universal in active addiction, and especially in early recovery. It feels like one part of you is desperate for healing, and another part is just demanding immediate relief.
And the UFM addresses that head on. It says the self isn't this single solid thing. It's a complex, dynamic system. It's made of subpersonalities and patterns that are very often in conflict.
Which is exactly why we need a good map and, a solid toolkit.
So our mission in this discussion is to synthesize two really powerful psychological models. That's Carl Jung's analytical psychology and Eric Berne's transactional analysis, or TA, and show you exactly how they align with the core principles of the UFM.
We're going to give you the vocabulary to actually name those warring parts inside you, the ability to trace where they came from, and then the practical steps to integrate them, to bring those fragmented pieces into a coherent, authentic whole.
This is the absolute foundation for the study guide work this week. It's about moving from just surviving to actually thriving.
Okay, so let's start with that central idea, fragmentation. The unified flux model explains that consciousness is this dynamic field of interacting energy patterns.
Right. And our psychological parts, they kind of exist outside of our awareness, almost like they're waiting in the dark until our conscious observation brings them into the light.
It's that moment you decide to stop letting those unconscious patterns run your life, and instead you turn the flashlight of awareness on them.
Mental Mike calls that the work of conscious observation. You're collapsing those chaotic patterns into a coherent, integrated whole. But what's the bigger name for that whole process?
That's where Jung comes in with individuation.
Exactly. It's the lifelong journey of becoming the most authentic version of yourself by confronting and integrating everything that was previously unconscious. And for anyone in recovery, this isn't some, philosophical idea.
No, it's a practical necessity. When you are fragmented, the addiction has leverage. It has a place to hide. When you're integrated, you are solid.
And Jung, he didn't pull any punches about what addiction really is. He saw it as a spiritual crisis, a misguided search for wholeness.
For transcendence, even.
Yeah. He had that incredibly powerful Latin phrase for it, spiritus contra spiritum, spirit against spirits.
Spirit against spirits.
The idea is that if a person has a spiritual or, an existential void, alcohol or drugs become a distorted chemical attempt to fill that void. They offer this momentary counterfeit experience of wholeness that the psyche is just desperate for.
That context is so crucial because it reframes the whole struggle. It's not a moral failure. It's a powerful human need that got tragically misdirected.
Absolutely. So when we look at the map Jung gave us for navigating that inner world, the first big landmark we always come to is the shadow.
And the shadow is so widely misunderstood. People think it's just the bad stuff, the anger, the selfishness.
Right, the cruelty. But what Mental Mike really emphasizes is that the shadow contains everything you've rejected, denied, or left underdeveloped. That includes negative potential, yes, but it also includes incredibly important positive potential.
I think that's the most surprising part for a lot of people. It's not just the dark rage you deny. It might be your healthy ambition, your creativity, or even the ability to set firm boundaries that you were taught to suppress.
Precisely. And that's why addiction so often provides this chaotic, temporary permission for the shadow to come out and play. The person who's normally shy suddenly feels bold when they're drinking.
Right.
So the key takeaway for recovery is this. You don't eliminate the shadow. You can't. You have to consciously confront and own those rejected parts and integrate their energy in a productive way. If you don't own your aggression, it owns you. If you own your capacity for passionate assertiveness, you can use it to protect your recovery.
That awareness lets us start to manage the persona. The persona is that social mask we all wear, the role we play. In active addiction, the persona just fractures completely.
Well, completely. You might have the professional mask, the hidden addict mask, and then this brand new, fragile recovery mask.
And they're all disconnected. They're all contradicting each other.
And that fragmentation is just exhausting for the psyche. Jung teaches that persona integration means you understand that the persona is a necessary tool. It's like a suit you wear for a job. It's useful, but it's not you.
So what is the real you then?
That's what Jung called the self, with a capital S. It's the organizing core, the blueprint for wholeness that exists beyond the ego. When we align our daily actions with the self, the persona becomes authentic and flexible. It serves the real person underneath.
And to give meaning to this whole, often painful journey, Jung gives us the concept of archetypes.
Yes, those universal patterns in human stories, like the victim, the scapegoat, or the hero. And for recovery, the most transformative archetype is the hero's journey.
Mental Mike frames the recovery process this way a lot.
He does, because it's so powerful. It's the call to adventure, leaving what's familiar, facing trials in the dark woods of your own unconscious, and then returning home transformed.
And why is that framework so helpful for you, the listener?
Because it instantly reduces shame. It tells you your suffering isn't pointless, your struggle is universal, and your decision to face your inner demons is, by definition, a heroic act. It gives this grand narrative meaning to what can otherwise feel like just messy, repetitive suffering.
Okay, so Jung gives us the map of the inner world, shadow, self, archetypes, which helps us understand why we fragment. But now we need the practical day-to-day toolkit.
Exactly, and that is the perfect bridge to transactional analysis, or PA, created by Eric Berne. Jung gives us the depth, TA gives us the structure of our immediate internal dialogue. It's incredibly actionable.
It really is. TA proposes 3 ego states: the parent, the adult, and the child.
And most people have heard of these, but let's anchor them in the reality of recovery. The parent is that internalized voice of authority from our caregivers. It can be nurturing, you can do this, or it can be critical. You always mess up.
The child holds all the feelings and responses from our own childhood. It can be the free child, spontaneous, joyful, or the adapted child, which is the part that seeks approval, feels shame, and is highly reactive to criticism.
And the state we're always trying to strengthen is the adult. That's our rational, present-centered, reality-testing awareness that can observe what's happening without judgment.
In active addiction, these states are just locked in this vicious internal conflict loop.
Let's trace it, because seeing it is key. A stressor hits. Immediately, the critical parent jumps in with shame. You are worthless, you fail at everything, you should be stronger than this.
That attack just throws the adapted child into a state of intense pain and vulnerability. The child thinks, I'm overwhelmed, I have to escape this feeling, I can't handle this.
And that's the moment the adult, instead of stepping in with reason, becomes compromised. It starts to rationalize using, just one won't hurt, it's been a hard day, you deserve a break.
So the compromised adult facilitates the use, which quiets the child for a minute.
Only to give the critical parent more ammunition for its next attack. It's a self-perpetuating machine of destruction.
And we see that play out externally too, right? In the drama triangle switching between persecutor, victim, and rescuer with our loved ones.
Absolutely. The antidote, both inside and out, is to establish adult-to-adult transactions. That means clear communication, firm boundaries, and real responsibility. That can only happen when the adult is in charge.
So this brings us to the core practical skill that the UFM is really focusing on this week. Learning to recognize which ego state is active right now. How? How do you listen for the signals?
It's mostly in the language and the emotional posture. If you hear yourself using words like should, must, always, that's the parent talking.
And the adapted child?
That's more emotional language. Feelings of smallness, of helplessness. I can't, I'm overwhelmed, it's not fair.
But the adult?
Yeah.
The adult asks questions rooted in the present moment.
Yeah.
What are my options here? What's the most realistic way to see this? What is the boundary I need to set?
Yes. That pause, that simple act of self-questioning, that is the conscious intervention that breaks the whole cycle. And it's crucial because that's how we override our life scripts.
Which, in TA, are those unconscious life plans we decided on in childhood. Messages like, don't succeed, or I am unlovable.
It's heartbreaking because active addiction serves that script perfectly. The substance gives you temporary relief from the pain of that negative belief.
But the addicted behaviors, the hiding, the self-sabotage, they just reinforce and confirm that negative belief is true.
This maps perfectly onto Jung's idea of the complexes. A complex like an inferiority complex or an abandonment complex is a cluster of emotionally charged material that acts on its own.
Almost like a mini personality inside you.
Exactly. And when a complex gets triggered, it bypasses the adult's rational control completely. It just floods you with emotion and forces an automatic, often destructive reaction.
Let's use a specific example, like a performance complex. A person whose entire sense of worth is tied to achievement.
If that complex is running the show, they'll push themselves to impossible limits. To keep up, they might rely on stimulants to work longer or alcohol to quiet the anxiety when they feel like they're failing. The complex drives the behavior, which drives the use, which makes the complex even stronger.
It's a toxic feedback loop.
So the UFM strategy here is all about strengthening that adult's ability to step in. When you feel that surge of emotional overwhelm, that's the complex activating. You have to first just recognize it.
They've had to name it.
You name it. You say, this is my inferiority complex being triggered, or this is my fear of abandonment kicking in. Naming it creates separation. Then you ground yourself in reality. I'm safe right now. This is an old feeling, not a present fact. And then you choose a conscious response.
Which usually involves giving yourself permission for something.
Permission to be human, permission to rest, permission to disappoint someone and still be okay. These conscious permissions are how you rewrite those old life scripts. It's how you integrate those reactive complexes.
And we do all this challenging internal work because, as Mental Mike reminds us, the ultimate goal is to reclaim natural flow.
Flow states. Those are the experiences of optimal engagement, where you're so absorbed in an activity that you lose track of time. Action and awareness just merge.
And your brain rewards you with a huge neurochemical bath. It's the feeling of being perfectly aligned with the moment.
But addiction corrupts this. It provides an artificial flow state immediately with no effort, no skill, no real engagement.
And the consequence of that is disastrous. It's called reward deficiency syndrome. Our brains get so calibrated to expect these massive chemical surges that the simple satisfaction of natural rewards, a good conversation, finishing a project, it just feels flat.
That's why early recovery can feel so joyless. Your brain is literally healing its reward system.
But the good news, based on all the neuroscience the UFM integrates, is that neuroplasticity is real. The brain can heal.
It just requires deliberate effort. You have to consciously seek out activities where the challenge matches your skill level. You're teaching your brain to value mastery and engagement over those chemical shortcuts.
So flow, then, is really the ultimate practice of wholeness. It's where your consciousness aligns with the natural flux of energy without resistance.
The adult is engaged, the critical parent is silent, and the free child is expressing itself through skill and creativity. It's integration in action.
Before we wrap up this whole discussion on internal integration, there is a critical and difficult component of recovery that Mental Mike never shies away from, and that is supporting life through crisis.
Specifically, we need to talk about the elevated risk of suicidal thoughts.
This is a matter of safety, and we have to talk about it openly. Suicidal thoughts are not character flaws. They are symptoms. They're acute symptoms of overwhelming emotional pain.
To help us understand the mechanism, Mental Mike uses the cup analogy. Imagine your emotional cup is already full, maybe overflowing, with undealt with pain, shame, trauma. That's the water in the cup.
Suicide is almost never triggered by the full cup alone. It's triggered by the last few drops, the job loss, the argument, the unexpected bill that finally make the cup spill over.
And the profound lesson here is that recovery has to be about finding ways to pour the water out of the cup all along the way. That means active, continuous processing, talking honestly with a sponsor or counselor, writing, exercising, whatever it takes. We cannot let that pain accumulate to the point of overflow.
And it is absolutely vital that you and everyone around you knows the warning signs of elevated risk.
Talking about feeling trapped or hopeless, increasing substance use, putting affairs in order, giving away important possessions.
If you or someone you know is struggling with these thoughts, the most important thing is immediate action. Do not wait.
Reach out right now to a professional, a trusted person, or call 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And critically, remove access to legal means during a crisis. Research shows again and again that simply making the means less available during that temporary crisis saves lives.
And remember the core truth here. Feelings are not facts, and crises are always temporary. Get support right now.
This whole journey, from confronting the shadow to managing our ego states to strengthening the adult, it all brings us back to that ultimate insight from the unified flux model. You are not broken. You are fragmented.
And recovery is the sacred work of reassembly. Jung called it an alchemical process, the descent into the dark chaos, the nigredo.
Followed by the process of purification, shining light on the unconscious, the albedo.
Leading finally to the creation of the coherent, integrated self, the rubido.
And every single time you pause to notice which ego state is dominating your thoughts, every time you acknowledge a triggered complex, every time you choose an adult response,
you are actively participating in that process of integration. You are consciousness becoming more mindful. That awareness is the most powerful healing tool you have.
This podcast honestly scared me a little. Not because it was wrong, because it was too accurate, especially the part about fragmentation. That feeling of different versions of yourself pulling in opposite directions constantly. That was my entire life during addiction. One part of me desperately wanted help. Another part wanted complete escape. One part wanted connection. Another part pushed everybody away. And somewhere in the middle was this exhausted version of me, trying to keep functioning at work while everything inside me quietly collapsed. The podcast said addiction isn't just chemical dependency. It's inner conflict turned into survival behavior. That sentence hit me hard, because I spent years believing I was simply weak. Not fragmented, weak. The Jung and transactional analysis combination explained my internal world better than any therapy session I'd had before, especially the critical parent stuff. That voice in my head never shuts up. You're failing. You should be stronger. You're disappointing everyone. You don't deserve rest. And eventually the child part of me would completely shut down emotionally under all that pressure. That's usually when I drink. Or take extra pills, not to party. To silence the war happening inside me. The podcast describing addiction as a counterfeit experience of wholeness. That honestly made me cry. Because substances temporarily made all the conflicting parts of me stop fighting. For a few hours at least. Everything felt quieter, more unified, more manageable, until the shame came back worse afterward. That cycle nearly killed me. The shadow section hit hard too. Especially hearing that the shadow contains positive things we rejected too. That surprised me. I always thought my shadow was just anger or selfishness, or destructive impulses. But they talked about buried creativity, healthy aggression, boundaries, authenticity. And I realized how much of myself I buried trying to become acceptable. Especially as a woman in healthcare, always composed, always giving, always self-sacrificing. The free child inside me disappeared years ago. The flow state section really stayed with me too. Because before addiction got severe, I used to experience flow naturally. Painting, playing piano, long runs outside, then eventually substances replaced all of it. Why spend hours building fulfillment when chemicals can imitate it instantly? That's the trap. But the podcast also explained why recovery feels emotionally flat at first. Reward deficiency syndrome. That helped me stop panicking about early sobriety. I thought something was permanently wrong with me because normal life felt numb. Now I understand my brain is relearning how to experience reward naturally again. That gave me patience I didn't have before. The suicidal ideation section hit really close to home too. Especially the cup analogy. Because people think suicidal thoughts happen suddenly. For me, it was accumulation, stress, shame, exhaustion, isolation, tiny drops filling the cup slowly until it overflowed. And hearing them say those thoughts are symptoms instead of moral failures. That mattered more than I can explain. Because shame thrives in secrecy. And addiction almost always grows stronger in silence. The biggest thing I'm taking from this podcast, though, is this idea that recovery isn't about becoming perfect. It's about integration. About finally letting the fragmented parts of yourself stop fighting long enough to become whole again. That feels less impossible somehow. Less like punishment. More like healing. And honestly, after years of secretly believing I was fundamentally broken, hearing somebody describe me as fragmented instead of defective might have changed my life.
If something in this conversation stood out to you, don't ignore that. That's usually where the work begins. Recovery isn't about trying harder. It's about understanding what's actually happening and learning how to respond differently over time. If you're ready to take the next step, you can find resources, guidance, and support at soulrecoveryhub.com. Take what you heard today, sit with it, and keep moving forward. Copyright 2026, Mental Mike, all rights reserved.